We know a lot about Jesus Christ. We know his parents and his journey to the crucifixion. We know his message and his journey of search in life. What we don't know, however, is what Jesus did between the ages of 12 and 30. 18 years are not mentioned in the biblical story of Jesus, the years that formed his life. The unaccounted years, also known as the lost years of Jesus Christ, between the ages of 12 and 30, are a biblical puzzle that has puzzled scholars and Christians for years. There is no record of where Jesus may have come or gone during that time, leaving a religious void that has been filled with theories largely inspired by religious beliefs, rumors, and folklore, depending on the sources. And whether the reader believes it or not, this article will cover many colorful stories that have emerged since the 1900s, during those 18 lost years of Jesus. Many efforts have been made to fill in the 18 years lost when Jesus disappeared from the Bible. This has led to stories of him traveling to far-flung places like India to study with Eastern mystics, Persians, and also stories of his visits to North America. Others, such as those that revolve around the belief that Jesus came to England and even visited Cornwall, have created colorful stories involving King Arthur and the legend of the search for the Holy Grail. So is there any evidence to support the belief that Jesus traveled thousands of miles from Judea to other nations? The earliest sources come from the gospel texts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Bethlehem is where Jesus is believed to have been born, but the Gospels say that his family left shortly afterwards and settled in the town of Nazareth, fulfilling what the biblical prophets had predicted that Jesus would be called a Nazareth. Nazareth was a quiet farming and fishing area where the community lived frugal lives, indicating Jesus' status as manual labor because he and his carpenter father Joseph made a living as craftsmen. Given the slim job prospects, one theory is that Jesus may have been looking for a career 3 miles away in the bustling town of Sepphoris in present-day Israel's central Galilee, a town famous at the time for its intricate mosaic art created by the Romans. With many opportunities to build houses and walls, this town could be the first stepping stone to what would later be believed to be the starting point for Jesus' quest for spiritual enlightenment. If some Christian scholars believe that Jesus spent most of these years intervening as a carpenter in Galilee, there are very few references to this in the Bible. The 18-year gap in the scriptures has generated some surprising theories, but so far none have been confirmed by reliable evidence. One theory about Jesus and his missing years is that he made an epic walk from his home in Nazareth. If this event had happened, Jesus would have been just a 12-year-old boy, so how emotionally equipped and understanding must such a young man be to undertake such a great and potentially dangerous journey? It is more likely that while living in Sepphoris, the young Jesus may have acquired his initial knowledge of the world through speaking Aramaic and learning to read. A handwritten passage suggesting this is found in the Gospel of Luke, which states that Jesus entered the synagogue and read from the scroll of the prophets. During this time as a young man, he directly experienced the social and economic oppression of the Jewish Palestinian peasantry of his time, of which he was a part. Such knowledge may have been the motivating factor that encouraged Jesus to seek answers in the outside world, and may have influenced the controversial decision to leave his family. Some scholars believe that Jesus' father Joseph died when he was about 12 years old, and that this traumatic event may have been the catalyst for him, as a young boy, to embark on a journey of spiritual enlightenment. This journey of almost 2 decades may have begun as soon as he was 13 years old. It is at this vulnerable age that the missing years are supposed to begin, and many theories about where Jesus spent his formative years to mature can be explained in many ways. Regardless of the responsibility that a young Jesus might have for his mother and extended family in Nazareth, it must have been a controversial decision to leave his close ones at such a young age, as he embarked on an epic and dangerous walk. However, some Christians believe that the years of disappearance do not have many consequences, and that any revelation about them is unlikely to make a difference to the understanding of the Christian faith. In other words, if it matters, it will be included in the Bible. Other scholars argue that knowing where Jesus was and what he went through during those undocumented years could help shed light on many of the mysteries surrounding Christianity. For years, there have been rumors that the Vatican holds mysterious truths about the life of Jesus and his 18 years of disappearance. This information can drastically change traditional beliefs. So far, no information has been revealed about the existence of such documents and what Jesus did and where he lived between the ages of 13 and 30. Some researchers believe that he spent these unrecorded years visiting England with a Joseph of Arimathea, while others believe that he traveled to India and Persia. In the late 19th century, a Russian traveler claimed to have discovered canonical texts in a monastery in India that prove that Jesus traveled and taught there and elsewhere in the East. This story is based on the belief that Jesus went to England with Joseph of Arimathea, a tin merchant whom some believe to be his uncle, although other Orthodox Gospel texts describe him primarily as a wealthy man and a disciple of Jesus. A large amount of material has been written about this particular story, bringing it into the traditional realm. So in the 15th century, Glastonbury in Somerset was considered the birthplace of English Christianity. Joseph is credited with building the first church there to store the Holy Grail. There is also a story that Joseph of Arimathea had previously visited Glastonbury with Jesus as a child, which inspired the artist and poet William Blake to compose a poem that would later become the English Hymn of Jerusalem. And those feet in ancient times walking in the mountains of England were green, and the Lamb of God on the beautiful meadows of England is it seen. The mysterious story of the Holy Grail and its existence in England may have been further embellished by a story circulated in the late 15th century that Joseph of Arimathea brought 2 silver vessels of Christ's blood to England, and that these relics were buried in his tomb. Although this story has evolved into silhouettes of King Arthur and his legendary knights on their quest to find the relic, there has never been any record of a temple marking the exact location of the tomb. Another variation of this theme mentions that Joseph buried the Holy Grail beneath Glastonbury Tor, which is believed to be the entrance to the underworld and where a natural spring, the chalice well, began to flow. It is believed that these streams of water will bring eternal youth to anyone who drinks them. Another legend relates to Joseph of Arimathea, that he brought the holy hemp to the town of Somerset. The story goes about Joseph planting his wooden cane in the ground, which then miraculously blossomed into the Glastonbury hemp, a variety of hawthorn that usually blooms twice a year in the spring and again around Christmas. One of the most fascinating stories involving Joseph of Arimathea, and considered a recent composition, is that when he was a tin merchant, he took the young Jesus with him on a merchant trip to southwest England and Cornwall, where tin was abundant. The story can be traced back to the English author Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould, who introduced it in his 1899 book Cornwall. 23 years later, in 1922, the legend of Jesus visiting England was added to a pamphlet by the Reverend Lionel Smythe Lewis, priest of St. John's Church in Glastonbury, Somerset. Lewis was very interested in the stories of Joseph of Arimathea's connection to the area, and may have taken Baring-Gould's idea of Joseph and Jesus in exchange for tin in Cornwall, and moved the story to Glastonbury. By the time it reached its final version in 1955, the Apostolic Church of England had expanded the story to about 200 pages with a claim that Glastonbury was the burial place of the Virgin Mary. In 1894, a controversial book called The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ, written by a Parisian of Russian descent named Nicholas Notovich, was published. The work makes the astonishing claim that during the forgotten years of Jesus' life, he visited India and trained as a Buddhist monk. In the book, Notovich tells the story of his visit to India 7 years earlier, accompanied by photographs of the people and places he met. Notovich recounted that during the trip he broke his leg and was forced to recuperate at a remote monastery in Hemis on the Ladakh Plateau, India. During his recovery there, he was shown an ancient document that he had heard about. The document is written in Pali Indo-Aryan language in 2 large volumes of cardboard with leaves that have turned yellow over time. The texts describe the travels and studies in India of a man named Isa, who could only be the Jesus of the Bible. Isa is the Arabic name for Jesus in Islam. Indeed, this document is titled The Life of Saint Isa, the Best of the Son of Man. According to the text, Jesus left Judea at the age of 13 and began an epic journey of self-enlightenment through the study of other religions. Notovich writes that Jesus crossed the Punjab and went to Puri Jagannath, where he studied the Vedas, ancient books of India, under the guidance of Brahmin monks. He spent 6 years in Puri and Rajayur, near Nalanda, the ancient place of study of Hinduism. He then went to the Himalayas and spent time in Tibetan monasteries to study Buddhism, and returned to Judea via Persia at the age of 29. At the time, Notovich's book was a global publishing phenomenon that was translated into many languages, including English, and went through 11 French editions in its first year of publication. However, more than a century and a half later, Notovich's book is largely forgotten, and its contents and statements are relegated to the imaginary world by his contemporaries. But some Notovich supporters believe that documents proving the author's claim could be kept at the Vatican. Even at the time Notovich wrote the book, some people were skeptical, and found his claims unbelievable. The German linguist Max Müller claimed at the time that either the monks at the monastery had made fun of the Russian author, or that he had fabricated the whole story to make money and forged the ancient manuscript. A respected Indian scholar called Notovich's claims a blatant lie. Müller even wrote to the head lama at the monastery, where Notovich accused him of staying after his injury, and received an answer stating that no Western visitors had visited the monastery in the past 15 years, and that there were no ancient documents like the one the author described. Soon after, J. Archibald Douglas, professor of English and history at the Government College in Agra, India, actually visited the Hemis monastery and also interviewed the head lama, who claimed with certainty that Notovich had never been there. Both Müller and Douglas wrote articles refuting Notovich's claim that Jesus had come to India, even allying together to write a book titled Jesus Did Not Live in India, stressing that Notovich's writings about Jesus' lost years were completely fabricated. After Notovich visited the monastery of Hemis and claimed to have seen a document proving Jesus was there, no physical evidence was found to confirm his claim, such as a photograph of the mysterious manuscript. Notovich delved into the book's prologue to explain why no material was included. During the trip, I took many strange photos, but when I reviewed the negatives when I returned to India, I was extremely disappointed to see that they were completely destroyed. A recent conviction of Notovich was discovered in a contemporary report kept in the archives of the British Library, written by a Russian-speaking British official, Donald Mackenzie Wallace. The Scottish civil servant and foreign correspondent for the Times revealed that after meeting Notovich several times in July 1887, he claimed that the Russian tourist had once volunteered to be a spy for the British government in India. Wallace rejected the offer and described Notovich as an immoral adventurer. Despite these allegations, Notovich remained steadfast to the claims in his book, promising to return to the monastery and bring back the original manuscript. There is no further information from him on this matter, making the author's claim of Jesus' visit to India a myth with no basis in fact. One perspective to scrutinize the claims that Jesus as a teenager embarked on an epic journey on foot to other continents is to consider the realities of traveling at that time and the reality of going to a country on harsh terrain and sometimes impassable routes. According to the New Testament, the main places where Jesus performed his ministry were Galilee and Judea, with activities also taking place in surrounding areas such as Peers and Samaria. Christian texts mention that Jesus walked 3,125 miles during his holy ministry. Taking into account that a determined, on duty can make the trip from Judea to Galilee 150-200 km on foot in 6 days, an experienced and knowledgeable pedestrian can venture much further. During Jesus' lifetime, a conservative estimate of the number of miles he may have walked was given as about 21,525 miles, which is roughly equivalent to walking around the entire world. The standard means of transportation is usually on foot with an estimated mileage of about 20 miles a day, but people also ride on buffaloes, donkeys, and camels. It is possible that during Jesus' walks and journeys to far-flung places, such as the Himalayas, he was able to use such a means of transportation, along with the addition of additional caravans to carry supplies. Referring to the standard walking habits and abilities of the age, such an epic journey is said to have been undertaken by Jesus alone and for many years was physically feasible. But is this journey reliable for someone who is too young, just a boy to start without an escort, medical knowledge, or experienced navigation? At the time of Jesus' teaching 27 to 29 AD, Judea was under Roman rule and was subject to the tyranny of Roman rulers, who were given the power to punish by execution. This was a dangerous time, even in the isolated lands of Judea, where looting and murder were not uncommon. Ironically, the Romans did more to facilitate travel than any other empire as they built major roads and cleared the seas from pirates. The Pax Romana, Roman peace proclaimed by Emperor Augustus 27 BC 14 AD, helped people like Paul the Baptist travel relatively safely. Historian Lionel Casson writes, "Travelers can travel from the banks of the Euphrates River to the border between England and Scotland without crossing a foreign border. He can sail through any sea without fear of pirates, thanks to the Emperor's patrols. The fastest form of long-distance travel is by ship, which is only carried out from April to October because of the danger in winter waters. Paul himself is said to have sailed east from Greece to Israel and west by land from Israel to Greece. By 300 AD, Romans had built a well-made network of 85,000 km of roads throughout their empire, mainly for military purposes. taking into account that the poor mostly walk and wear heavy shoes or sandals while facing the changing seasons, as well as natural phenomena such as floods and snow. There is also danger from wild animals and robbers. As Paul himself states in the New Testament of the Christian Bible, 2 Corinthians 11:26, I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. Regardless of the condition of the roads, the varied terrain, the danger of wildlife and bandits, and the availability of inns and hotels at the time, it seemed that a determined adult could walk, ride donkeys, ride horses and train thousands of miles, despite the possibility of getting sick, injured, and other misfortunes. Whether Jesus was able to reach the destinations claimed by some scholars and Christians at such a young age remains a mystery that continues to spark heated debate since the controversial claims of Nicholas Notovich in his book, The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ, written more than 100 years ago. These are the external conditions under which the humanity of Jesus has developed to maturity. It would be easy to exaggerate the influence they may have had on his development. The greater and more unique a character is, the less dependent it is on the characteristics of its surroundings. It is nourished from the deep springs within itself, and in its germ there is an enveloping pattern that expands in its obedience to its own laws and the challenge of circumstances. In any other circumstances, Jesus will grow to become the person he became in Nazareth in every important way. And if you've really watched this far, with God's blessing, share it with your loved ones so they can know about this as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to give us more motivation to create more videos about the Bible. We hope to see you again in the next video. May God bless you and protect you at all times. Amen.